Special edition of the Low Post. I'm Mike Gross, and instead of Starkey, who is normally seated to my right, we have Chip Smedley of the Sunday News because he's a hockey guy. Starkey and I are not hockey guys, but we definitely wanted to talk about hockey today because of this fascinating series between the Philadelphia Flyers and the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Flyers lead it 3-0. I think most hockey people thought the Penguins were going to win this series and maybe even were a favorite to win the Stanley Cup. What have the Flyers done, just in a sort of macro view here? What have they done to really take the Penguins apart?
Well, they haven't morphed into 9-year-olds, which is what the Penguins have done.
I'm glad. I knew we were going to get there eventually, but I'm glad we went. I'm glad we went right to it.
Well, that's the biggest thing. And I'll say from the outset, I'm not a big Flyers fan, so I am as shocked as anyone that they're actually playing somewhat disciplined hockey and playing good hockey. And they don't look like the team they look like halfway through the year. Luckily, Brizgalov seemed to change back into his unshaky self, but when you get 8 goals in a game, I might be able to do well in net for the Flyers. And
he's made some spectacular saves.
Yes.
But he really hasn't been phenomenal overall. This is one of the highest scoring playoff series in the history of it.
Yes. He tends to let in the shaky goal even though he makes spectacular saves. Now, on the other hand, Marc-Andre Fleury is terrible. After 3 games, he has allowed the most goals in the history of the NHL in the first 3 games of a series. It's like 6.29.
Right.
And so he's not good.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the element, the role that physical intimidation is playing in this. There's so many little things that are symbolic of it. I mean, I just think the fact that the Penguins went back to Pittsburgh for during these off days, which probably makes sense from a practical standpoint, but it feels like they're going, with their tail between
went home.
Yeah, that's what it feels like, and there's so many little things in which are sort of symbolically where the Flyers have this physical edge. The Penguins call this Fleury. They call it, his nickname is Flower.
Yes.
Come on, man.
Yes.
So just talk a little bit about the role of physical intimidation in this.
Well, it can play a role, and the Flyers for years were the masters of that. I mean, the Broad Street Bullies set that whole mold, and other teams have used physical intimidation. But there's a difference between smart physical intimidation and stupid physical intimidation. So this is what gets your Sean Averys and those kinds of knuckleheads around. The Penguins have turned. I don't know what they're doing. I'm not a big fan of the Flyers. I'm not a big fan of Sidney Crosby. I appreciate his talent, but over the years he's just got. What's that? There's a guy on the WIP that hate the face. He looks like Eli Manning every now and then with that. And so
hate the face.
I haven't. That bugs me about him, and he has been the leader in this, which is ironic because here's a guy who missed tons of time with concussions.
That is ironic.
And he gets into a fight, which then I don't know. Aaron Asham, who was the one who steamrolled Braden Shen and then punched him in the back of his head while he was down. I don't know if Asham's trying to sort of fit in and do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, what is it? I mean, it's like the Penguins are so determined to not be on the receiving end of the physical intimidation that they're trying to become something they're not,
right.
and are really, really bad at it, and it's almost having the reverse effect of what they would hope.
It's not just plain out fighting. It's when Neil leveled Couturier, he left his feet and drove his elbow into the guy's head. That, fighting, I can understand. There's a role for fighting at times, although people will argue with me about that. But, that kind of stuff is somewhat controlled. And even when they're fighting, they don't get a lot of leverage because their feet are sliding around and whatnot.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's more of a sort of a statement. But this kind of stuff is just, in a league that's got these concussion problems, why don't they look at the NFL and look at all those lawsuits being filed by players?
You anticipated my next question.
Go ahead.
It seems like, and supposedly their TV ratings are up, so it almost seems like when other sports, the NFL in particular, are going the other way, or the NFL is thinking about eliminating the kickoff. I mean, I don't think they're really going to do that, but they're talking about it. The NHL almost seems like maybe it's going back the other way a little bit. I maybe agree or disagree. And maybe it works. Maybe it works.
It can work in the short term, but it's not going to help in the long term. The playoffs always get sort of peripheral fans.
Right. Right.
And
for good reason.
Right.
I mean, it's
right.
it's pretty cool to watch. Even if you're not really into hockey.
For shortening any kind of season, the playoffs are the argument for shortening the hockey season because those games in February and March are just brutal.
Man, it's the same argument we make about the NBA.
Yes,
the regular season is twice as long as it ought to be. Yep.
The other problem is Brendan Shanahan, the league discipline czar, has got to be one of the most inconsistent guys that's ever assumed that job. He I don't get his thought process.
Go figure.
I don't know what's going on there, but I think that's part of the problem too. And maybe do they look at the playoff ratings and say, "Oh yeah, this is the way hockey should be"?
That's kind of what you wonder. Now,
those people aren't going to sustain you through an 82-game season.
Right.
They're just going to watch for the playoffs.
Right. Now, very quickly, is this really significant in terms of the Flyers' level of play? Can they win the whole deal?
The Stanley Cup? I don't think so. Lundqvist, he had another shutout for crying out loud. The New York Rangers goaltender.
That's the team, I think, for the Flyers, isn't it?
Yeah, and they don't match up well at all. They sort of match up well with the Penguins because they got these young rookies. Couturier is like Velcro to Evgeny Malkin. The guy can't do a darn thing, and he's been a no-show for the series. Shen is a little pain in the neck, and he's only 19, so he's got energy like crazy. So they match up well with the Penguins. They don't match up well with the Rangers.
The Flyers are very young, though, and this is an intriguing group going forward, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, especially with Giroux and Shen. They could be. They're not like the old Broad Street Bullies. I might actually have to start changing my view of the Flyers if they continue to play.
They can
like
score.
This.
They're very good offensively.
Yeah.
Don't tell us that we don't do hockey on the low post, folks. See ya.